Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with your host, Christina Nichman.
Savvy Business Radio, home to over 500,000 listeners per month, and runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Savvy Business Radio. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week on Savvy, we host successful individuals and business owners, inviting them to share their dreams, stories, wisdom, and gifts with the world. Our first guest is Curtis L. Walker, author of Courageous Caregiver, Support and Encouragement and Tools to Aid Our Heroes Who Partake in Home Health Care for Those with Dementia. Curtis also provides online workshops and tools on his website at courageouscaregiver.org. Our second guest is Jo Hausman, best-selling author and career coach. In her book, Go For It, A Woman's Guide to Perseverance, readers can follow her personal struggle of grief, loss, laughter, and joy and discover how they opened the doors to strength, talents, and fulfillment of dreams. Find out more about Jo and her book at johausman.com. Hi, Curtis. Welcome back to Savvy Business Radio. Thank you so much. We did actually record this wonderful interview prior, but had some technical difficulties, and you're back to share with us some of your background. You work helping families and caregivers with dementia, dealing with dementia, and families dealing with dementia. Very big topic in our country and around the world. It's getting a lot more people having to deal with it in families. I know in my family, we had a wonderful aunt who had 16 children, and she passed away having had dementia, and it was really hard for her family to see that, and as well as for me, because she was such a strong, powerful woman keeping the whole family together. But share for our audience how this came about, that you made it your mission to help families dealing with this.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Christina, for having me back, considering our technical difficulties. I know it takes a lot of love and commitment on your part to reach out to people like me and understanding the passion that I have for other people who are engaged with care. That's one of my biggest compassions that I got involved with. And just to give you some background about myself, I know when I started out doing caregiving, that was something that was outside of my reach or realm. I'm a former U.S. Marine, and I've basically traveled the world doing all sorts of things for the military. And to go from that to actually being a caregiver was a huge stretch for me. In my situation, it was presented to me by one of my older sisters. I'm the youngest, and I have 5 older sisters. But one of my sisters who I actually owned a home that she was living in, and she had started showing signs of issues with her memory and also managing her finances. And that's kind of how I was alerted that she was having some sort of cognitive problems. And as a result, I ended up having to, talk to her and look deeper into her situation to find out what was going on. And as a result of getting connected with her and her doctor, the doctor then basically explained to me, he said that she's been battling with dementia, and she actually had been keeping it somewhat secret to herself because of the HIPAA law for approximately 4 years. So I jumped into the picture after that and just started learning what it meant to actually care for somebody with dementia. Now, it was a huge stretch for me because I'm like, okay, what do I do? How do I care? I'm a guy also caring for an older sister. What does all this look like? And it was a complete lifestyle change for me. And trust me, when it comes to dementia, that is so overwhelming and confusing to a lot of people, because you look at someone in their physical sense and they look perfectly fine. But then when you engage them in conversation, you start asking them questions, and then you realize you're forgetting some very important things such as names, dates, places. They're forgetting things about, just basic math, how to do their basic checking. They're forgetting phone numbers, locations. My sister was prone to getting lost. And when I got involved with the situation, she was still driving at the time. So as a result, there was a couple times where she would get confused and lost, and I would actually get a phone call from her saying, I'm running late and I'm not even sure where I'm at, but, give me a few minutes and kind of, can you tell me where such and such street is at? And I would have to direct her over the phone on how to get to her location. So it was a challenge to also help her relinquish some of the control over her life to the point to get it to a safer state, such as getting her to stop driving. And then second of all, she became a wanderer or, walker. And a lot of people with dementia end up getting a poor sense of direction. And she would walk to places and get lost. Or she would just wander with, no one knowing where she was, and she would be gone for hours.
Wow.
And, it was a scary situation for us. So now I spent approximately, I'm going to say close to 6 years caring for her and watching her go through every stage of the disease, not every stage, but more so the middle stage all the way through the end stage.
Yeah.
Now, during this time frame, she passed away about a year ago. So I cared for her all the way up until that end. And during that time, I did a lot of research and study on the disease. I studied a lot about her and her personality. And I'm going to say for me, it was quite emotional. This is something that I encounter when I interact with other people who are in similar situations. And one heavy emotion that most caregivers go through is, first of all, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And we examine that in ourselves. Well, first of all, we not only ask that question about ourselves, we ask it about, why did this happen to my loved one? This person has been like, the rock of their family or somebody in the greatest of health, and all of a sudden this disease hits and makes them almost get to a childlike state. And that's a hard emotional hit for a lot of people to have to face and deal with. Now, I mean, my sister, she was a business owner, and she had a real estate license. She ran a seamstress business, and she was very active in the community, and she traveled a lot. And then that to the point where I literally had to do almost everything for her, down to the point of, like cutting up her food so she could manage eating it. Even during the last year of her life, I actually had to feed her, by hand every day.
Yeah.
So, it's a huge transition for myself. And then the other things that some caregivers face is that when you're close to the person that you're caring for, especially if you're couples, this is where I see it the heaviest, is that it almost gets to a state where no one can care for your loved one better than you. So you actually go so hard at it that it almost becomes like a form of martyrdom, where you can't step back enough to see that you're actually going too far with the level of care that you're giving. And I was actually at that state too, where, my routine was I would get up early in the morning. I had my regular job I would go to. So I would actually, at points, take her to, I had an adult daycare I would take her to. Then I would go to my job, come back from my job, pick her up, then spend the entire evening, cooking, cleaning, washing, everything else for her. And then even when she went to the nursing home, that was going to be easier for me. That turned to just as much work because it was emotionally draining. And she was also, the type of dementia patient where their minds become combative and also overactive. So she was a handful for the staff at the nursing home, so I had to go up there and intervene a lot in a lot of cases.
Well, stop there, right there. That's very interesting that you just went there, because I've seen that for people close to me that have gone through it, that the combative nature that comes out. Is that a certain type of dementia that happens, or just a certain personality of a person that, strong-willed, you were very independent? What have you found in your research?
There's a couple of things that I know, obviously, that brings that out. One of them, if they have a high-strung personality even before the dementia hits, then basically the dementia takes off inhibition. So anything that was already roaming through their mind is just going to be more of it unrestricted. So you might be getting the rough behavior because of that. Other reasons it happens is because we as human beings, we have different interpretations of what we think certain events mean. So a person with dementia, they have no reasoning factor over what stuff means. So their brain comes up with the most simplest form of answers to, like, let's say, for instance, my sister would pick up something and she would place it in another location. Then she goes back to look for it in its old location. Her brain thinks that I didn't move it, somebody else moved it. So then it turns into, okay, the brain says, if I didn't move it and somebody else moved it, they stole it. So then it starts becoming a case of somebody getting accused for it, and they feel violated. So it usually boils down, though, that they have a need that's not being met. And this is pretty common for all human beings, that when you don't have a need that's being met, you want to do something about it. You either want to lash out, or in some cases I've seen with people with dementia, they get depressed. If they physically can't do anything about the situation, they're either going to get, extremely angry and vocal, or they're going to shut down. My sister actually displayed both of those behaviors, where she got angry, she got vocal, she even resorted to using foul language, and she did it without restriction. She didn't care where she did it, such as, like, even if we were in church or something like that, she would sometimes let loose because she felt frustrated. So I've seen that as being very common. And then the other issues that aggravate it, as we as caregivers, we don't really understand everything that's going on at the cognitive level. So we step in and we do the automatic takeover, not respecting the fact or really gauging the fact of where our loved ones are at. So then we start rearranging their life, and they automatically resist to it, and that's going to trigger some emotions, and they're going to also trigger some expressions with those emotions.
Now, when you say rearrange your life, meaning make it easier for you, the caregiver, or any caregiver coming in, so that you can take care of them. Maybe it's situating where the pills are, or, moving things about so you can fit inside the household and help them. They just feel like you've come in and just taken over their house, and they feel violated.
Oh, absolutely. I know in my sister's case, because she ran her seamstress business before the disease hit, she had all different types of clothing everywhere and all in every location of her home, as well as, I'm literally going to say, well over 150 different pair of shoes. And her mind then became so simplistic, she couldn't, for one, decide what clothes to wear, decide what shoes to wear, and she had an overabundance of clothes. In my case, I had to actually simplify her life to make my care for her simpler. So part of that required for me to go through and eliminate certain clothing. Now, that turned into a gigantic battle, because the first mistake I made was I tried to do the clothes rearrangement with her present. And as I was removing clothing from the racks, she was going to wherever I placed them and put them back on the rack. She wasn't having that, change of her lifestyle. So then my second approach was, there were times where I had arranged for her to get out of the house. And on those moments where she got out, I made sure certain clothing that I knew she wasn't touching or dealing with just magically disappeared, or it didn't turn into a threat to her. So I had to come up with different techniques and things or skills to work where it will reduce tension between the two of us.
Wow. And how prevalent is this disease, dementia? Now, there's not just one type of dementia either, right?
Oh, no, there's actually about 80 different types of disease. We hear about the common ones. We hear about Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is a subset of dementia. We also hear about Lewy bodies. We hear about Parkinson's disease. You also hear of Huntington disease.
Wait a second, they're all part of the same body of dementia?
Yes, they're all part of the same family. You also have vascular dementia, and you also have frontal lobe dementia. You'll hear a lot about the frontal lobe dementia in those who engage in physical contact sports, like football players, those who like do hockey or boxing, like Muhammad Ali. Even though they said he had Parkinson's disease, much of it was actually related to frontal lobe damage from boxing.
Oh, wow. I didn't know there were so many interrelated diseases, such as
Yes.
Parkinson. I had no idea they had a relation to each other.
Yes.
Wow. So, for anyone out there who thinks that their loved one or maybe even themselves are having difficulty and may have dementia, what would be your first line of defense or advice for them?
First of all, get a good checkup because the differences in the dementia requires a different type of treatment for each. If you actually end up getting the wrong type of diagnosis, you're also going to get the wrong type of medicine or therapy, such as, like, let's say, if you have vascular dementia. If they treat it with the same medication they would treat with Alzheimer's, you're not actually going to get good results. And sometimes, well, there's certain types of dementias that's reversible, such as vascular.
Wow.
You will see that, like, when people are getting vascular dementia, it's almost on the same level of getting a stroke. And with the right amount of, I'm going to say, therapy, changes to your diet, changes to your physical activity, you can actually get some good, better brain activity coming from the therapy that's related to that. Now, Alzheimer, that's the one that's kind of, I'm going to say, really heavy and pretty much fatal.
Wow.
So the treatments and things that they give to you is more so like a Band-Aid approach. They have two common medications that they give to them, which is the Aricept and the Namenda. And it's like it's a combo pack. You take them together, and it doesn't restore memory, but it does slow down the memory loss. And also they have a 2-year not shelf life, but 2-year functionality. So, I mean, once you start it, you're only going to get 2 good years where it's slowing things down for you.
Now, you say it's pretty much when you get Alzheimer's that there's no cure for it. Does that mean that most of these diseases do lead to death? There's no way to reverse it, and you can't be someone with Alzheimer's and live 20, 30 years. Most likely you will die within a couple years?
I'm going to say that information is based off of statistics and my opinion, not opinion, but more so the facts when it comes to statistics. Alzheimer's is working with like 15-year-old data. Our information about dementia is really 15 years old for our understanding at the medical level of what they know about it. The statistics is stacked in a certain way where they announce it as being fatal is because they have limited information on it. Each day, new research, new medications, new therapies that are coming out. So things are getting better. They're getting more hopeful as doctors are becoming more conscious about what's really going on out there. I know that there's only really a handful of doctors who really understand it and know how to treat it. And that's the other thing I'm saying. If you have a loved one who has it and you get the initial diagnosis, and most of the time it's going to be by primary care physician, your next step will be go immediately to get connected with a neurologist. And your first test that you want to get is a PET scan. A PET scan is a 3D image, nuclear medicine type scan that actually looks at your brain and looks how your brain processes sugar and oxygen. And that'll tell you how bad or how much damage or where the damage is with the brain. And then based on that information, that'll determine what type of dementia or that they have, and also that'll help them better diagnose what type of treatment to give. And the other thing I would tell people is do your research. There are a lot with that with the book that I put out. There's information on how to do some research, but you really want to do research on who's top in the field right now as far as for your flavor of dementia, so that that way you can then work with your local doctors or work with whomever, so that they're following the same line of treatment that the top in the field are using to actually combat the disease.
Yeah, wow. So is dementia really a kind of new disease in the medical world, in that it hasn't been around that long for them to study it and understand it? I mean, I know the brain is a universe upon itself.
Right. I'm going to say dementia has been around for a long time. It's just that we've given it a name. We've given it different labels to go along with it. And then we have new technology to look deeper into what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as for Alzheimer's, there's no definitive cause, but there are some commonalities that they are noticing in the medical world. One commonality is, I'm going to say, the lack of physical activity or lack of oxygenated blood that we have flowing to our brains, which means that we as human beings, we have to willfully get up and get active, no matter what stage you are in your life, whether you're a young person or, you're in your 70s, 80-year range or whatever, you should still be up and active. The second thing would be always keep your brain engaged. I know like most people, they go through either high school or college, and that's where the bulk of the learning stops.
Mm-hmm.
The human brain is a receptor. We take in information from our five senses, but if those five senses aren't always challenged where they're feeding information to the brain then basically does as simple as thing, which is nothing. It won't learn anything, won't do anything, and dementia is a disease that affects your ability to learn and take in information. So if you're not challenging your brain, you can't even engage if you're starting to show signs of the disease.
Wow. You know what this reminds me of, Curtis, is that my grandma, who had severe arthritis, used to say to me that her doctor would say, to slow down the progress of arthritis in your body, just use your joints, go out there and walk and type and do whatever it is to keep your body in movement. And that sounds similar to what you're saying, that really keep your brain active because you don't want to lose the ability to keep learning. Wow, that's really amazing. Now, you're also working on some amazing courses that can really help caregivers. Share with them a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I hooked up with this company called Udemy, Udemy, and on that's a lecture website. So what I did is I created a lecture because, as part of my work with the book and promoting the book, I was actually traveling to different places and doing speeches and seminars. But I found that it was easier for me to actually record the seminars and then let people log in and view it versus me traveling all over the world to try to do it.
Yeah.
So I've created a course that I'm actually releasing in a couple of days. It'll actually probably be out the first week of August 2016. And you can just go to Udemy and then look up Courageous Caregiver Core Essentials. And it'll bring up the website. You'll see the picture of the book right there on the link, and just walk through the information that's in the Core Essentials. Now, some things in the Core Essentials are some very common basic thing every caregiver should know. Such as, first of all, if you're living in the United States, we have this important issue called medical insurance. Getting the right type of medical insurance so that you can treat your disease without breaking your financial bank while dealing with some of the care processes. Other things to cover, such as like the right legal forms to have when taking care of the needs of somebody else, such as power of attorneys, conservatorship, guardianship. I'll walk you through the whole detail of that. Then the thing that hit me was when I was caring for my sister, we kept running into limited financial resources. As I was researching, I came across a ton of resources that are out there that are geared to help people who were in our similar situations. So I put tons of links in there. I walked through on actually how to fill out certain forms. So it's about a little over 2-hour lecture that goes through that you can, pretty much gain everything you need to know. And then one hot topic that I covered in there is dealing with caregiver burnout. That's one where you as a caregiver, you're engaged with dealing with someone, but you can't tell how bad off you really are while you're caring for your loved one. There's a great assessment that I put in there and some resources related to that, and also what to do next if you find out that you're burnt out. How to get the right help, how to assemble a team, how to, tap into all the other resources to lighten your load so then you can step back and then recharge your own personal batteries.
Those are fantastic tools. I know will help everyone. I want to head on back to what you said about the MRI, I believe you said, to go get that after you get your diagnosis, that the scan will look at the oxygen and sugar operating through your brain. And then when you said that and you tied back how important it is to oxygenate your blood to keep moving,
yes.
Is that really the reason? It just came to my mind. Is that kind of the reason dementia comes about, because there's not enough oxygen and sugar moving around in the brain?
Well, the brain is very simplistic and it's a very delicate instrument or organ within our body.
Mm-hmm.
The key elements that the brain functions off of, one of them is blood, then the other element is sugar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically sugar traveling within the blood, and then the other element is oxygen. The brain needs all three of those in order to function and thrive. Now, the thing about the brain is that it has basically micro veins running all through it, passing blood, sugar, and oxygen throughout the entire brain. And this happens all the time, day or night. And if the brain actually is not fed,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if it's deprived of oxygen, and then we've been taught this since we were kids or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you take science and biology, that if you deprive the brain of oxygen, it'll actually kill off brain cells.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when I was talking about
Mm-hmm.
vascular dementia, when a person is actually having vascular dementia, you got to think about in your neck, you have two major arteries, which are your carotid arteries. When we have a high buildup of cholesterol in our arteries or even in our diet, it reduces the blood flow to our brain. So once you get that taking place, you then actually start killing off sections of your brain. You'll notice that like when people who are experiencing diminished blood sugar levels,
Mm-hmm.
you get a little bit loopy. They'll get a little bit off,
Yeah.
easily agitated. Now, you'll
Mm-hmm.
find somebody getting agitated is because they've had reduced blood and sugar level to their frontal lobe. Their frontal lobe is our frontal lobe is our reasoning center. So when that actually starts to get deprived, then that's when we start getting agitated the most. I know I found that that's one of the primary areas with somebody who has, especially Alzheimer's,
Mm-hmm.
when their brain starts to go, they'll actually get to the point where you'll notice them to either start using foul language a lot or saying things that are taboo. They'll tell like off-color jokes, or they'll well, not only did my sister have it, but I also had an aunt who had it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had on my wife's side of the family, her grandfather had it now, or he has it. With him, he was I'm going to say, a very straight-laced kind of a person, but then he got to the point where he started telling some jokes and making statements that he would never say in his normal state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
That was my indicator to know that something was a little bit off with him.
Yeah.
But it's important to get good brain health and also keeping the brain engaged. That was the other thing that I was alluding to.
Mm-hmm.
Have to challenge our brain. I want to say one good challenge that I would recommend to anyone: engage in anything that helps you do problem solving and memorization. Such as, like, let's say if you wanted to learn a new language, or like, let's say if you are not musically inclined, how about learning lyrics to a song that you are not accustomed to hearing or singing? Like, let's say country and western, you might get into trying to sing hip hop. I'm just throwing that example because it challenges the brain even more.
Yeah.
General things like that. The brain needs to be challenged, and also problem solving type puzzles. Like, let's say if you're doing word search or crosswords or whatever, those keep the brain engaged. Or try to learn new words that you add to your vocabulary.
Yeah. Wow, this is fascinating and so true. What I'm picking up from you is that to really keep your body functioning at its optimum, both your full body, physical body, as well as your brain, to keep it active, learn new stuff, really maybe be outside your comfort zone, try new things, a new exercise, a new hobby. All of that sounds like ways to keep your brain and your body active. I want to thank you, Curtis, for coming to share this valuable information today. Let everyone know where they can find out more about you and your courses.
Well, I can be found at www.courageouscaregiver.org. That's .org, www.courageouscaregiver.org. Then you can find my book on Amazon. I released it in paperback as well as on Kindle. Then also in Udemy, udemy.com. you can just look up Courageous Caregiver, and you'll see one of the videos that I will be releasing next week, and then I have another set of videos that will be releasing shortly thereafter. So that's the main way you can always catch up with me, or if you want to reach me by email, you can reach me at curtis@courageouscaregiver.org.
Wow, you are so generous. Thank you so much. You've done so much to help people out there. I want to thank you for coming to Savvy Business Radio. And everyone, please go check out courageouscaregiver.org. And again, Curtis, thank you for coming to Savvy Business Radio.
And thank you, Christina. You've been a true blessing to us.
Now, here's our interview with Joe Hausman, author of Go For It, A Woman's Guide to Perseverance.
Hi, Joe. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
Hi, Christine. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, too. I was so happy that Michelle at Bestseller Publishing could get us together. You've written a wonderful book, Go For It, A Woman's Guide to Perseverance. And I was quite intrigued when I heard the title. And a bit about your background. You have an intriguing, awesome, incredible background. But before we go on to all of that, share with our audience what brought you to writing your book and becoming a coach.
Well, what brought me to writing my book is I lost my husband back in 2010, and so I just wanted to be able to, when I first wrote the book, I just wanted to be able to tell the story. And the thing is, I just wanted to be able to help one person through the process because he had end-stage liver disease and needed a liver transplant. And so I wanted to show our love for each other, but also what he taught me to be positive throughout life, to live life in a positive way, but also as women entrepreneurs, because I was working at-home business at the time. I was a virtual assistant. And but through working with that, I was able to help take care of him and raise my family at the same time, plus care for my mother, who she still lives independently, but she needed some help. So the book is really about just persevering through all that. Women entrepreneurs, we're kind of a tough breed, and sometimes we need guidance ourselves. And instead of taking care of everybody else, we need to be able to allow love and people to take care of us.
Very, very wonderful point to make, because I think as women we feel that we have to take the mountain in the world on our shoulders, and we can't ask for help. And that is one of the things I learned a couple of years ago, the idea that, oh my gosh, I could actually ask for help from my friends, my family, and they just might want to help us, and if they knew that we needed help, but we first have to tell people what we need.
Exactly. And if we don't, then we just suffer in silence.
What was it for you that made you self-reflect and realize, I'm not nurturing myself, I need a little help? And was it hard for you to ask for help?
It was. It was really hard because I'm usually the one that I take care of everybody else, and people come to me with problems or issues. So it was really hard for me to be honest, before my husband was fully diagnosed, he had contracted hepatitis C, and because of a tattoo, and so he didn't want me to tell anybody about that. And so I didn't. I kept it all a secret. So when he came out with full-blown end-stage liver disease, then all of a sudden the secret was out, and people were like, what the heck's going on, and those type of things. So to me, it's more honorable to be honest from the beginning.
Yeah.
Just let people know what's going on. They might look at you funny, but I tell you what, it's so much better than having it blow up in the end. It blows up in the end, it's not pretty, but people are always there to support you. That's no doubt, but it's just maybe a little embarrassing, because all of a sudden you have to tell people he's in this full-blown disease, So, yeah. That would be my recommendation.
Actually, what I found when I fess up to a difficult situation or what's going on in my life, that you want things to look rosy, and then you just tell people, okay, things are really not so rosy. This is what's going on. For one, they understand because they're going through their own trials and tribulations. They have their own stuff. So they're like, oh, right. Okay. Or they might be like, hey, I went through that similar situation with my father, my uncle, my brother, and they can help relate. But if you don't tell them, they think, well, Sarah is always awesome. Nothing ever goes wrong in her life.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And they think your life is so rosy, and in reality it's not. Yeah. And so we just never know what happens behind closed doors. And so when I finally told people what was going on, I had more support and more help than I ever thought possible.
Yeah. Do you think by doing that you allowed other people the permission to be honest and open as well?
Yes, definitely. Because, they came forward. Now, nobody else that I knew really had that same issue going on,
Yeah.
but people really wanted to help, and that was just in their giving nature to help. And so it was really worthwhile once we finally opened up the door of that communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And through all of this, it seems when I really pick up from looking at your background story is that you really open yourself up and let yourself be vulnerable. And did that help you later along the line becoming a business owner and a coach?
It did, because once you become vulnerable, people don't see you as perfect anymore, but you also have to realize yourself you're not perfect anymore, which I knew that already, but I always wanted this persona. You know, I wanted to be able to have this persona out there, but in reality, it's not. You know, we're all imperfect, and we all don't live a glorious life. But the thing is, what my husband taught me is you wake up every day and you say, today's going to be a positive day. Whatever happens, today is going to be a positive day, you know. And so that's the preface that I've lived on for years now. And you just, even if something as bad is happening, I try to turn it around and make it a positive thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something I was supposed to learn along the way. And so that's what he really taught me. And so as a business owner and coach, I try to instill that in my clients to teach them that, you know what, maybe this isn't maybe the right scenario, but let's look at it in a positive light. Let's look at it in this different scenario. So I try to bring different scenarios and different ideas into their life so they can grasp at that.
Yeah, I get you there. And during some really difficult times in my life, when I reflect back, you realize that there's a stepping stone that, you know, the really icky times actually were some of my greatest learning curves in my life. And I look back going, wow, that was really awesome time, because I learned so much. I grew so much. I got so many wonderful people join my life that weren't there beforehand. So, yeah, I mean, and awesome. When things are really going awesome, often I think we take it for granted until things get a little and then I love it when things were awesome, but we have to remember that it's winter and spring will be here again, or quite shortly.
Yep. And that's exactly right. And even through the worst storms, and what I tell people, I heard this saying one time, and I think it's so true, we've already survived our worst days. You know, so even if we're going through trials and tribulations, we've already survived our worst day. You know, and so every day is a glorious day, and we just have to make the best of what's to come.
Yeah. And once my mentor said something interesting. She said to me, I was having difficulty in something, I don't recall what it is, and she said, okay, give me the worst case scenario. Think of the worst case scenario. And I started to give her some options of what I thought the worst case scenario was. And she's like, okay, and then go further. Give me some more stuff. Like, she wanted me to paint the most icky picture I could possibly think of. And then I did. And then she said, so then what? Do you think you'll be dead? Do you think you'll exist? So the bottom line is, she was trying to get me to realize that in the worst situations, you usually come out alive and you make it. And things come out better, and you have a better life going forward. But to realize that when things are not so good, you feel like it's the end of the world. And I think what happened for me, I don't know about you, Joe, is I start to get super tunnel vision. All of a sudden, all I can see is the one option in front of me, and that everything's awful. And when you really stop to think, okay, what's the worst that could possibly happen? And if it does happen, so what? I'll still be here tomorrow, and it can be, then we'll go from there and we'll make it a better day.
Exactly. I get the exact same way. And all you can think about is that one thing that's going on, or several different things that are going on in your life. And you're right, the tunnel vision can get the best of us. And that's why we have to look around us and say, you know what? We're doing okay today. We got up, we survived. And what I tell people is, if you're having a bad day or things are rough, take one day at a time. And if that's too much, you take an hour at a time. If that's too much, you take a minute at a time. But celebrate those small victories. Celebrate the smallest victories and just gradually build yourself up to more.
Yeah.
And there are many a days I had to do that. There are many a days that I had to get right down to my core being and celebrate right back down to, because nobody wants to go back down to, where they felt horrible. But we just have to just celebrate the small victories and keep moving forward and keep knowing that there's a purpose for your life.
Yeah. And one thing my mentor taught me is similar, the same thing to that. She said, tell me today 3 successes you had. I'm like, what successes? I made no sales. Like, I couldn't get out of bed. But she said, no. You woke up, right? So, no, but looking at wherever you are, look at anything. Or some people say, what blessings or gratitude that you could have for anything that happened in your life. I have 2 beautiful children who are healthy. I'm healthy, or I was able to eat today. Anything that it might be to realize that, okay, not everything is really, really awful.
That's right. And that's just it. And not everything is awful. And, you have your health, you have your, whatever's going on in your life that day. I mean, that's just whenever you wake up, how I do it as every day I wake up, I think, I believe in God, and I thank God every day for, waking me up today for another glorious day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
it is. It's a blessing. And what does it look like for you when someone comes to you and they need help, and you say, I'm going to help you as a coach? What does it look like when you work with them? How do you start with them?
Well, I really want to get to know them and just talk about like what they've done before in the past. Have they owned a business in the past? Are they looking to start a business? Are they just needing some life coaching to kind of get through some hard times? To be honest, I deal more with small business coaching, but I have done life coaching as well, and I'm a certified coach. And what I really want, I just want to get down to their core being. I want to get down to their core and just know where at all. And now you're not going to find that out in the first meeting,
No.
But little by little, that onion just keeps getting, drawn back more and more. And so get to that core being of who they are. And from there, then we can explore and we can engage and we can move forward in life and get them to where they need to be.
And Joe, what I'm guessing is that even for myself, the self-reflection and understanding myself has been a long process. It's not a one-day process, even for myself, understanding myself. Why do you think it is that as we grow from children into adults, that we often just lose touch of who we are?
Because we get so busy taking care of others, we get family involved, we get friends involved, we get jobs involved, We're looking sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as anybody else. Maybe we're always looking for the next best thing, bigger house, bigger vehicle, whatever. And so we let life get in the way. And the one thing I say this a lot, the one thing I ran from was the one thing I needed the most, and that was alone time. Alone time with myself, so I could self-reflect and just look at my whole self and go, all right, what the heck is going on here, And once I became quiet, all the outside noise and all the outside chatter quieted too. So then I was able to make peace with some stuff that had happened and just be able to move forward in life. And then I also journaled. I journaled a lot. And actually, a lot of my journal pages are in the pages of my book. But that's the only way I could do it because I'm not always real good at communicating like my deep personal feelings. And so, but writing them down helped me a lot. And so from writing them down, I actually put those into the pages of my book. And the publisher was just best-selling publisher, was just absolutely wonderful to me. So, and they helped me craft it all.
That's
but
awesome.
because it's such a personal story. And so when I'm coaching people, I can also relate my information to them. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not just like your mentor and I have a business coach myself. I've worked with for several years now. And, but in each stage of our life, we change. And so it's just, just learning more and more about each other.
And you said something interesting. You said that I didn't know where to go next, but it was like peeling an onion. So you took one layer after time. And I think that's true. I think we're so much more deeper. And one coach or business lecturer had said a number of years ago, the one thing you need to work in your life is probably the one thing you're running away from and that you're most scared to even look at. And he said to everyone, write down the one thing that you're most scared of in your life. And everyone just staring at a blank paper like, I don't know. What am I scared of? And even coming to that to answer that question is not a one-step process. It's maybe answering several questions ahead of that before you can even begin to think, okay, what is it that I'm really running away from in my life that I just can't look at? That's too scary for me.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, a lot of people don't want to relive their past. But healing your past is how you're going to move to your future.
Yeah.
And if you don't heal your past, you're going to keep repeating those same mistakes over and over again. And so at least I did for me, and I've known other people who have done it. And so my biggest thing is let's heal your past before we can move to your future. And let's heal so, if you want to start your own business, maybe you've had a couple of failed businesses before. That's okay. Lord knows I've had my fair share of, failed ones. So, and that's why I tell them, I said, it's okay if you have. And I know it's scary to start and jump right back in there again, but let's take the steps necessary to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah. And if you look at any super great company or business, they started out with several failures before they had successes. So, yeah,
exactly.
Part of the journey is having,
yeah.
And I think
it's all a journey. Life is a journey.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I've often seen like, oh, I've got to reach this end destination of success, whatever that is. And when you think about it, what the heck is it? Because you get to the so-called, picture in your mind of where you think success is. Say you reach it, then what? Then you'll have another goal. So really this illusion of I've got to reach this, this elusive success doesn't really exist. It's an ongoing change in definition and journey that you hope will be your entire life.
That's exactly right. And that's happened to me over and over again. So it's just, I remember one time back in my early 30s, I wanted to become a supervisor at the job I worked at. And so I got as far as acting supervisor, and I was paid for it, And I got there, I'm like, well, this is nothing. I worked this hard and this long to be this. And I'm like, why did I ever want this position? All it was a little bit more pay and more headache. And so that's where I really started thinking, gosh, I should work from home. That's when my son was little. And I thought, maybe working from home, And so what I did was I just took they actually had a pilot project where I could work at home. And so I stepped back from the supervisor position and I went back into the work from home. And guess what? That's where I found out that I love to work from home. Because I stepped out of the role that I wanted to be in so badly that I worked 5, 6 years, 7 years for. And when I got there, I didn't like it. So I stepped back and I went into a different role. And after I had this, and the pilot project was only like 3 months long. And so I completed that pilot project of working from home. And this was back in, like the late 90s. And I thought, that's it. I knew then I wanted to work from home. I didn't know what, how, when, or where. But I knew I wanted to work from home, and I knew somehow I was going to start a business where I could work from home.
Yeah.
So
it starts for asking the question and realizing, okay, this is what I want. You don't know how yet, but at least now you know where you want to go, and it gives you the first starting point. And I don't know about you, Joe, as well, but I often, when I have an idea, I want to get to X, Y, Z. I think, okay, what are all the steps in between? And I'll wait until I have all the bits and information before I take the first step. And I found for myself, it really doesn't work that way. You really have to be able to kind of jump off the ledge, take those first couple of steps before the other steps start revealing themselves.
Exactly. And when I started my virtual assistant business at home back in 2005, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about the internet. Well, I didn't know one darn thing. When I started, all these clients were coming and they were asking me to do these things. I was like, but you know what? I did it. I jumped in. I Googled it. I learned as I went. And that's how I was able to maintain it. And I was honest with some of them, saying, you know what, I'm not really sure how to do it, but I'll certainly Google it, learn. And that's how I did it. I just had to jump in and figure out how to, if I would have said, no, forget it, I don't know, how to do that, I would have lost a lot of clients. I would have lost a lot of work. Now, as I went on, I figured out what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. So eventually what I did was I built a team around me. And so I was able to refer some of the work to the team, to others around me. And then therefore they did the same thing with me. And but it all takes time. It all takes patience.
Yeah.
And it all just takes knowledge.
Yeah, it's power and applying the knowledge. I think a good many of us, including me, before I even stepped out to start my first business, I had read about 7 years of self-help and different books before I even took the leap, because as I was thinking, hey, once I have the plan and action where every single step is laid out and I know guaranteed that it's going to work, then I'll start. And of course, then I never got started until my health started to go way down in the gutter. And I was like, okay, it's now or never. But it's funny how sometimes you need that little kick in the pants to get started.
Yes, definitely. And that's how I was too. And I was still working a full-time job when I started mine. But I just knew that this was what I wanted to do. So I worked it at night. And I worked my full-time job during the day, and I worked my virtual assistant work at night. And I did it for 9 months until I finally had enough clients that the money was flowing in steadily that I was able to quit my full-time job.
That's great. And what I got from you, it's great that you kept the job, because some people think, I'm just miserable. Or some people are stay-at-home moms, and they're like, hey, I want something for me now, something that expresses me, where I can put my gifts and talents in the world expressingly and get paid for it. And so some people are in that position. But it's awesome that you were able to reflect and say, I'm going to keep this on the side so I have cash flow coming in. And then when this grows, my business, and I'll let go of the job. Now, when you mentioned before that you brought a team on board, how hard was it for you to really let go of some of the things you had been doing and delegate them?
Now, that was probably the hardest part for me, because I can delegate when it comes to other people's things, but when it comes to my own things, I'm very protective. And what was happening is I actually had a team of 10 virtual assistants underneath me. And then I also had a team of like graphic designers, website designers, those type of things. And what I did was when I would have extra work come in, I would, hand it off to my virtual assistants. Well, what I was finding is if they didn't get the work done, or if I was getting complaints from my clients, I immediately grabbed the work back and I just did it myself. And I was driving myself crazy. I was working, from 8 a.m. until 2 a.m. and only getting a few hours of sleep. And after a while, I remember my son walked out of his bedroom into my office and said, Mom, would you please quit working so much? And I looked, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I just said, you know what, you're right. And that was my turning point. He was about a sophomore or junior in high school. Yeah. And I said, you know what, you're right. I've got to stop. This is just crazy. So after that, I decided my hours were 8 to 5. I was always at my desk at 8 o'clock in the morning. That was just one thing I never wavered from. But now I was stopping at 5 o'clock, and whatever didn't get done the next day. And I was so much more productive when I did that than I ever was working until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Why is that?
Because I was much more scheduled with my time. I had East Coast clients, I had Midwest clients, and I had East Coast clients. So East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. And so what I did was, the East Coast got done right away in the morning, the Midwest then kind of the middle of the day, and the West Coast in the afternoon. And it worked so much better that way. I was just able, because I'm centrally located, so I'm central. So to me, it was a lot easier to do it that way. I had to put a system into place, or else I was going to drive myself crazy.
And it seemed to me, Joe, that at that point when you made that decision, and the key word there is decision, that you also had to let go of wanting to just pick up a job from one of your assistants or workers and do it yourself when you felt it wasn't getting done the way you wanted. Is that true?
That's right. Yep, and that's exactly right. And so what I did was I would let that virtual assistant go and maybe bring on somebody else. Or eventually what happens is, unfortunately, the client fades away as well. And so, again, I brought back down to my core clients. And when extra clients would come in, I would hand them off to the virtual assistants that I knew was going to do the work for me. And the ones that weren't doing the work, then, I had to let them go. And that was probably the hardest part. I remember the first time I had to fire a client.
Whoa.
And that was really hard for me because she paid good, but she was very hard to work with.
Wow.
But once I did fire her, the business exploded.
Wow.
Because I wasn't weighed down with her anymore.
That is a good lesson right there, Joe. Really good lesson.
It was. Yeah, because I stressed about firing her because I'd never done it before. And I remember my husband, he said, well, just fire her. She's stressing you out. I mean, men are so good that way. They just do it, And I'm just like, no, I can't, But anyway, I eventually did. And it really opened up the door to so many better clients and more paying clients. And it was a true blessing.
Yeah, wow. I've heard quite a few coaches in the past are more maybe spirit-centered will say, well, it ties you up with negative energy. If you're working with someone for one you might not like, or just really icky person, it's going to stop you from cash flowing in and helping the other wonderful clients because you're so focused on the not so wonderful clients.
Exactly, and that's exactly right. And I thought the same thing at that point. And a couple of my advisors told me the same thing. All you're doing is being sucked down into negative energy, whereas if you let that go, you're going to bring in positive energy. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And same thing with life. If you're sucked into drama and sucked into negative energy, that's all you're going to be attracting. Once you get rid of the negative energy, you can bring back in the positive energy.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I'm guessing, because I know for me, I had quite a few not wonderful clients last year, and I took them on purely because I said, hey, this is cash flow coming in. This is great. People want it. And realizing from the get-go that some of these clients were going to be tough to work with. I could sense it from day one, first call. And I went ahead anyway and regretted it later, as some of them didn't even pay up, and I had to chase them down for payment. But the good point you make is that, go with your gut feeling too, and realize, why am I not wanting to let go of this client? Do I feel there's none behind them? What's your thought process or original thought behind saying no to someone, perhaps?
Well, and that was really hard for me too. And that it all takes time and it takes experience working with the wrong ones, and then when you work with the right ones,
Mm-hmm.
When those right ones come along, they are absolutely wonderful to work with. Yeah. And then you get the wrong ones and you get that gut feeling you're right. And this just happened to me 6-9 months ago, and I thought, why am I doing this? And I let the negative energy flow in, and I'm just like, After about 2-3 months, I said, you got to go, or else I got to go.
Yeah.
And so, but it also takes time and experience. Because when I first started my business, I don't know about you, Christina, but when I first started my business, I took on every client I could take on.
Yeah.
Because I wanted the experience, I wanted the money, I wanted whatever I could do to make, because to me, that made my business successful.
Mm-hmm.
See, look how busy I am. I have all these clients, Where in reality, I didn't need all those clients. I needed the ones that I knew what I was doing with, and the ones that took the time to get to know me and get to know my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so some clients would just come in and say, just do this and get it done and have it back to me by Friday. Other clients would be like, you know what, let's talk a little bit. Let's interview each other to make sure this is going to work.
Yeah.
And those are the clients I truly appreciate and the clients I continue to work for. And so that's, and after time goes on, you get a feeling and which kind of clients you work for and which kind of, especially when they start asking you to do certain tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say flat out now, nope, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Or no, I can refer you to so-and-so, they know how to do it.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I operate now. But it took learning all that and taking on every client I could take on until I realized that isn't what I wanted with my business.
Yeah. And it also shows you really care about your client, because you're saying, okay, I'm not the best person for you here, but I know someone who is. So that shows you're looking out for their best interest.
Well, I am too. And I'm all about networking. I love to network other people. And I love to, and I'm the first one to tell you, if I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to do it. Because I don't want to mess up something that's valuable to that client.
Yeah.
And so I will refer them to somebody that I know is good at what they're looking for. And that in turn, then that person or even that client will refer other people to me, knowing that they know the things that I do best at, then they can refer people to me.
Great plan, because as I've learned and you've learned, just taking on everyone isn't healthy for anyone in the equation.
Right.
But before we head on out
here,
here,
and I don't know about you, but that just gives me gray hair.
Yeah, it's giving me a few myself. I want everyone to know where they can find out more about you, work with you, get your wonderful book. Share that with them.
Oh, yeah. My website is www.joe, which is just J-O, and my last name is Hausman, Haus, as in Sam, MAN.com. So www.joehausman.com. My phone number is area code 605-941-7969.
Yep.
And on my website, you can sign up for a free consultation, or if you want to give me a call, and we can go over, set up a time for a free consultation as well.
Yay, and go out and get your book. Go for it.
That's right. Go for it.
Perseverance. Yes. Right. That is the key, baby. Perseverance.
That's right. That perseverance is all what it is, and that's what I've lived my life on, and I didn't realize it until I wrote the book that's what my life has been based on. So, yeah, and every person has it. Every person has that perseverance in them. Yeah. They just have to learn to utilize it.
You can tap into that, yep. Well, I want to thank you, Joe. It's been a wonderful getting to meet you further and sharing your gifts and talents with our audience. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy.
Well, Christina, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.
Have a great rest of your day.
Savvy Business Radio is home to over 500,000 listeners per month and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 732 area code 474-7375 or email us at Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.